I'm a 30-year-old woman, married to Adam, who's 32. We've been together for 7 years, married for 4. When we first met, everything was perfect. He was sweet, attentive, and seemed like the perfect partner. We shared the same goals, values, and dreams for the future. I remember thinking I had hit the jackpot with him. But as the years went by, it became clear that I hadn't just married Adam, I'd also married his mother, Linda. Linda is 58, and from day one, she made it clear that no one would ever be good enough for her precious son. At first, I brushed off her little comments as typical mother-in-law behavior. She'd point out that my cooking wasn't quite up to Adam's standards or that our apartment was too cluttered for someone who wants a family. When she came over for dinner, she'd rearrange my kitchen while I was cooking. If I decorated a room, she'd scoff and tell me how she'd do it better. Still, I figured if I kept the peace, she'd eventually warm up to me. Things escalated after Adam and I got married. Linda started showing up unannounced. I'd come home from work, exhausted, only to find her sitting on our couch with takeout because she thought Adam might be hungry. She'd rearrange the furniture while I was out, claiming it would make the place look more inviting. Adam would laugh it off, saying, "That's just mom being mom." It was frustrating, but I didn't want to be the wife who made him choose between his mom and me, so I let it slide. The first real blow-up happened about a year into our marriage. Adam and I had planned a quiet anniversary dinner at home, just the two of us. I spent the whole afternoon prepping his favorite meal, bought a bottle of wine, and set the table with candles. It was supposed to be a perfect evening. Right as we sat down to eat, Linda walked in. She hadn't called or texted. She just showed up with a casserole dish, claiming she didn't want us to feel lonely. Adam invited her to stay, and that was that. I spent the evening watching Linda dominate the conversation while Adam happily went along with it. After she left, I told him how upset I was. His response: "She's just trying to be nice. It's not a big deal." That night, I realized we had a problem. I suggested couples therapy, hoping we could work on setting boundaries together. Adam shut it down, insisting we didn't need outside help to deal with family issues. He promised he'd talk to Linda, but nothing changed. She kept showing up uninvited, criticizing everything I did, and acting like our home was hers. Meanwhile, Adam either ignored it or made excuses for her. The financial issues started not long after. Linda would call Adam, crying about some emergency, a car repair, a medical bill, or a home repair she couldn't afford. Adam would dip into our joint savings without telling me, only for me to find out later. When I confronted him, he'd say, "She's my mom. What am I supposed to do?" It felt like I was fighting a losing battle. Linda's needs always came first, and I was left feeling like a third wheel in my own marriage. Then came the holidays. Thanksgiving at Linda's was the breaking point. She spent the entire evening making passive-aggressive comments about how I don't understand family traditions and need to loosen up. She handed Adam a plate of food without even acknowledging me and loudly told everyone how she misses the good old days when Adam still lived at home. I tried to grin and bear it, but when she started bragging about how Adam still comes to her for advice because he knows who really has his back, I lost it. I pulled Adam aside and told him I wasn't going to keep putting up with her behavior. He brushed me off again, saying, "That's just how she is. Don't let it get to you." I told him I needed him to take a stand for me, for us, but he claimed he was stuck in the middle and didn't want to upset either of us. It was like talking to a brick wall. The final straw came when Linda confronted me directly. She accused me of trying to steal her son and said I was breaking up their family. I was stunned. When I told Adam about it, he said I must have misunderstood her. That's when I realized he was never going to put me first. I've tried everything to make this work. I've had countless conversations with Adam, begged him to see my side, and even reached out to Linda to find common ground. Nothing has worked. At this point, I don't know what else to do. I love Adam, but I can't keep living like this. I feel like I'm competing with Linda for his attention, and I'm starting to wonder if this marriage is worth saving. That's why I'm here writing this post and hoping for advice. I need to know if I'm crazy for expecting my husband to put our marriage first. Am I asking too much, or is this as messed up as it feels? Update 1. Adam's birthday was coming up, and I wanted to do something special. I planned a quiet dinner at home, just the two of us. I'd already picked out his favorite meal, and even booked a babysitter for our dog so we could have an uninterrupted evening. I thought it was a perfect way to celebrate. But of course, Linda had other plans. About a week before his birthday, she called him and announced she was throwing a party. She didn't ask if we had plans, she just told him she was hosting something and expected us to come. When Adam casually mentioned it to me, I reminded him about the dinner I'd planned. He shrugged and said, "We can do both." The way he said it, though, made it clear which one he thought was more important. A few days later, Linda called again. This time, she convinced Adam that having 2 celebrations would be too much and that it would make more sense to just do the party at her house. When he told me, I asked if he was serious. He looked at me like I was overreacting and said, "It's just one day. Why not let her do this for me?" I didn't argue. I was hurt, but at this point, I didn't have the energy to fight him on it. So I canceled the dinner I'd been planning and resigned myself to whatever spectacle Linda had in store. When we arrived at her house, it was exactly what I'd expected, over the top and all about her. The decorations were gaudy and mismatched, with giant banners saying "Happy Birthday, Adam," and balloons in every color imaginable. She had invited a mix of family, friends, and even some of Adam's coworkers. The table was piled high with food, none of which Adam particularly liked, but Linda acted like she'd gone out of her way to make all his favorites. Within minutes of arriving, Linda was already at it. She greeted me with a passive-aggressive smile and a comment about how tired I looked. Then, as Adam greeted guests, she made sure to point out to everyone how much effort she'd put into the party. At one point, she loudly mentioned that someone hadn't even bothered to bring a cake, so it was a good thing she had taken care of it. The final straw came during the gift opening. One of Adam's coworkers gave him a set of grilling tools, and Linda leaned over and said, "Just loud enough for everyone to hear. Maybe now you'll actually get some decent meals at home." A few people laughed awkwardly, but I was done. I stood up and asked if we could talk in private. Linda waved me off and said, "Oh, don't be so sensitive. It's a joke." That's when I lost it. I told her this wasn't about the joke, it was about the constant disrespect. I reminded her that I had canceled my plans for this party, and that I wasn't going to sit there and be treated like an outsider in my own marriage. The room went silent. Linda, ever the actress, put her hand to her chest like I just slapped her. She muttered something about how she couldn't believe I would ruin Adam's birthday like this. Adam just stood there, staring at me, not saying a word. I looked at him, waiting for him to step in or at least acknowledge what was happening. He didn't. So, I left. I grabbed my bag, walked out the door, and drove home. I thought Adam might follow me, but he stayed at the party. When he finally came home hours later, he was furious. He accused me of overreacting and making a scene. He told me I had embarrassed him in front of his friends and family and ruined his birthday. I reminded him that Linda was the one who started it, but he wouldn't hear it. He said, "That's just how she is. Why can't you just ignore it?" The next day, I brought up therapy again. I told him we couldn't keep living like this and that if he didn't set boundaries with Linda, our marriage wouldn't survive. This time, he reluctantly agreed. We had our first session a week later. The therapist immediately picked up on Adam's enmeshment with Linda and pointed out how unhealthy their dynamic was. Adam pushed back, saying it wasn't fair to blame his mom for caring so much. He said she was just trying to help. Meanwhile, Linda found out about the therapy sessions, probably because Adam told her, and wasted no time mocking me. She called me dramatic for dragging Adam into this mess, and told the whole family I was brainwashing him against her. For the first time, though, I felt like someone was on my side. The therapist validated everything I'd been experiencing and encouraged Adam to see things from my perspective. But it was clear he wasn't ready to let go of his loyalty to Linda. He kept making excuses for her behavior, and every time the therapist suggested setting boundaries, he'd shift uncomfortably in his chair. After the party fiasco and the therapy session, I started to wonder if things would ever change. I wrote another update on Reddit, detailing everything that had happened. The comments came pouring in, with people telling me I was right to stand my ground. Some even suggested I think about an exit strategy if Adam didn't start prioritizing our marriage. For now, I'm giving therapy a chance, but I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Update 2. Not long after the birthday fiasco, things took a sharp turn for the worse. Linda started calling Adam more frequently, each time with a new problem that she claimed only he could solve. At first, it was little things. She needed help fixing her car or replacing an appliance. Then she dropped the bomb. She had emergency medical bills she couldn't afford. She called Adam crying, saying the bills were piling up, and she didn't know what to do. She didn't give many details but made it sound urgent. Adam, of course, jumped to her rescue. Without consulting me, he withdrew a significant amount of money from our joint savings to cover her expenses. I only found out when I checked the account to transfer some funds for a planned home improvement project and saw the withdrawal. When I asked him about it, he didn't even seem to think it was a big deal. He shrugged and said, "She's my mom. What was I supposed to do? Let her suffer?" I told him that making decisions like that without talking to me first was unacceptable. He promised it wouldn't happen again, but his tone made it clear he didn't see a problem with what he'd done. A few days later, Linda was on the phone with Adam while I was in the room. She was laughing and telling him how grateful she was that she could count on him. She casually mentioned to someone in the background, loud enough for me to hear, that it was nice to know Adam always puts family first. The way she said it made my blood boil. It was like she was rubbing it in my face. I brought it up in our next therapy session. The therapist asked Adam why he didn't involve me in the decision, pointing out that it undermined the partnership in our marriage. Adam got defensive and said it was just one time and that I was overreacting. When the therapist pushed back, suggesting that his actions were enabling Linda's behavior, Adam snapped. He stormed out of the session, leaving me sitting there with the therapist, trying to figure out what to do next. After that, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I opened a separate bank account and started moving some of my money into it. I didn't tell Adam right away, but I knew I needed to protect myself in case this happened again. Sure enough, it did. Linda called Adam again, this time asking him to co-sign a loan for her. She claimed she needed it to pay off some debts and promised it would be a short-term thing. When Adam mentioned it to me, I put my foot down. I told him that if he co-signed the loan, it would be the end of our marriage. I wasn't bluffing. I couldn't keep living in a situation where Linda had more influence over our finances than I did. Adam seemed torn. He kept saying he didn't want to let her down but also didn't want to lose me. For a moment, I thought he might actually listen to me. Then I found the paperwork for the loan on the kitchen counter one evening. His name was already on it. That was it. I packed a bag and left that night. I called a friend and asked if I could stay with her for a while, and she welcomed me with open arms. When Adam came home and realized I was gone, he started texting and calling nonstop. He begged me to come back, saying he didn't mean to hurt me and that he was just trying to keep the peace. Meanwhile, Linda wasted no time spreading her version of events. She told the family I had abandoned Adam because I couldn't handle being married to someone with a close family. She conveniently left out the part where she manipulated him into risking our financial stability for her own gain. While I was at my friend's house, I updated Reddit about everything that had happened. The support was overwhelming. People were telling me I deserved better, that I needed to prioritize myself, and that Adam's loyalty to his mother would never change unless he made the effort. Some even shared similar stories, which made me feel less alone. Now I'm at a crossroads. I've been staying with my friend for 2 weeks, and Adam has been texting me every day, saying he's willing to go back to therapy and work on things. But honestly, I'm not sure if I believe him. Linda still has a hold on him, and I don't know if he's ready, or even capable, of breaking free from it. I'm considering filing for divorce. It's not a decision I take lightly, but I can't keep living like this. I love Adam, but I can't compete with his mother for the rest of my life. I haven't made a final decision yet, but one thing is clear. Something has to change, or this marriage is over. Update 3. 2 weeks after I moved out, Adam called me and suggested a family meeting to clear the air. He thought it would be a good way to address everything: Linda's behavior, the financial issues, and the strain on our marriage. At first, I was hesitant. I didn't trust that anything productive would come out of it, but Adam seemed desperate to fix things. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The meeting was set for a Saturday afternoon at Linda's house. I arrived early to avoid any awkward grand entrances. Adam was already there, pacing nervously in the living room. Linda, of course, was in full hostess mode, offering coffee and snacks as if this were some casual get-together. A few of Adam's relatives trickled in: his aunt, his uncle, and one of his cousins. I couldn't tell if they were there to support me, Adam, or Linda, but their presence added to the tension. Once everyone was seated, Adam started by explaining why we were there. He talked about the issues between Linda and me, the financial strain, and how it was affecting our marriage. Linda sat there, arms crossed, looking like she was waiting for her turn to perform. When Adam finished, I laid out my grievances as calmly as I could. I talked about the lack of boundaries, the financial betrayal, and how I felt like Linda had been undermining our marriage from the start. Linda didn't even let me finish before she jumped in. She said she couldn't believe I was airing dirty laundry in front of the family. She started talking about all the sacrifices she'd made for Adam, how she only ever wanted to help, and how hurtful it was to be accused of manipulation. Her voice got louder and more dramatic with every sentence. It was like watching a soap opera unfold in real time. Adam's aunt tried to step in, pointing out that Linda's behavior might be part of the problem, but Linda wasn't having it. She accused the aunt of taking my side and said that if anyone here deserved an apology, it was her. She even pulled out her phone and started scrolling through messages, claiming she had proof that I had been turning Adam against her. She waved the phone around but never actually showed anyone the messages. At one point, Linda turned to Adam and asked, "Do you really think I'm the problem here?" Adam froze. He looked at me, then at his mom, and back at me. Instead of answering, he muttered something about not wanting to take sides. That was all Linda needed. She stood up, pointed at me, and said, "See, even Adam knows you're the one causing all this drama." I couldn't sit there anymore. I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshots I'd saved of the messages Linda had sent to Adam, messages where she badmouthed me, lied about needing money, and even mocked our therapy sessions. I handed the phone to Adam's uncle and said, "If anyone wants to see the truth, here it is." The room went quiet as Adam's uncle started scrolling through the messages. He passed the phone to his wife, who shook her head in disbelief. Linda started stammering, saying the messages were taken out of context or edited to make her look bad. But it was too late. The damage was done. Adam looked at the messages, his face pale. For a moment, I thought he might finally stand up to her. Instead, he said, "Mom, maybe we should take a step back and think about this." That was it. No apology, no accountability, just a vague suggestion that she think about her actions. Linda, realizing she was losing the room, shifted tactics. She started crying, saying she couldn't believe her own son would question her integrity. She turned to Adam and asked, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" Adam didn't respond. He just sat there, staring at his hands. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and told Adam I was done. I said I couldn't keep fighting for a marriage where I was constantly second place. I walked out, ignoring Linda's dramatic sobs and the murmurs of the relatives. Adam didn't follow me. Later that night, Adam called me. He apologized for not standing up for me and said he wanted to work on things, but I told him it was too late. I needed time to think about what I wanted and whether this marriage was even salvageable. I posted an update on Reddit, detailing everything that happened. The responses were overwhelmingly supportive. People told me I was right to walk away, and that I deserved a partner who would prioritize me. A few suggested that I consider divorce if Adam couldn't break free from Linda's control. Right now, I'm staying at my friend's place and focusing on myself. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but one thing is clear: I can't go back to how things were. Whether Adam decides to change or not, I need to take care of myself first. Update 4. After the disastrous family meeting, I decided to maintain my distance from Adam and his family while I figured out my next steps. I was at my friend's house when I received an unexpected message from Olivia, one of Adam's cousins who had been at the meeting. She mentioned something that caught my attention. Linda's financial situation didn't add up. Olivia explained that Linda had been bragging about her recent renovations and a luxury spa retreat she'd gone on with some friends. This was confusing since Linda had just claimed she was drowning in medical debt and needed Adam's help. Olivia thought I should know, so I thanked her and started digging. Over the next few days, I spent hours looking into Linda's financial situation. Public records showed no medical liens or significant debts attached to her name. I checked property tax records and found out that she'd recently paid off her mortgage, a detail she'd never mentioned to Adam. The pieces weren't adding up. During this time, I found an opportunity to visit Linda's house under the guise of picking up some things Adam had left behind. While she wasn't paying attention, I noticed a bank statement lying on the kitchen counter. The statement showed several large, unexplained purchases, including designer furniture and first-class plane tickets. I took a quick photo of it before leaving. That evening, I sent the evidence to Adam. He called me, clearly frustrated, and accused me of being obsessed with proving his mother wrong. He said Linda had always been transparent with him, and that I was trying to villainize her. I told him to take the documents to our therapist during the next session and let a neutral party weigh in. He reluctantly agreed. At our next therapy session, the therapist examined the documents and encouraged Adam to confront Linda about the discrepancies. Adam seemed conflicted but agreed to bring it up with her. Later that week, he went to visit her, and predictably, Linda denied everything. She claimed the purchases were misinterpreted and accused me of snooping in her private affairs. She doubled down, saying I was trying to ruin her reputation because I couldn't handle her close bond with Adam. A few days later, Olivia contacted me again. This time, she shared something even more damning. At a recent family gathering, Linda had been openly bragging about how she used Adam's money to fund her vacations and buy herself a little something nice. She laughed about how easy it was to get him to hand over money without question, saying he's such a mama's boy, he'd do anything for me. The gossip started spreading through the family. Relatives who had defended Linda at the meeting began to distance themselves from her. Olivia shared the story with others, and soon enough, it was clear Linda's carefully crafted image was crumbling. Adam's aunt and uncle, who had supported me during the family meeting, reached out to Adam to express their concern. They told him he needed to reevaluate his priorities before it was too late. When Adam came to me with the family's feedback, he still seemed hesitant. I warned him that if he didn't take concrete action, our marriage wouldn't survive. I wasn't going to play second fiddle to his mother any longer. Things came to a head when Adam overheard Linda talking to one of her friends on the phone. She was laughing about how she'd always had Adam wrapped around her finger and how I was just a phase he'd get over eventually. Adam didn't confront her right away, but when he told me what he heard, I could see something shift in him. The next day, Adam finally decided to confront Linda with all the evidence, the bank statement, Olivia's testimony, and even the recordings of her bragging. Linda didn't back down. Instead, she threw a dramatic tantrum, claiming she'd been betrayed by her own son. She accused him of choosing me over her and insisted she'd done nothing wrong. Adam broke down in therapy after that confrontation. He admitted he'd been blind to Linda's toxicity for years, and that his loyalty to her had hurt our marriage. He apologized for failing to stand up for me and promised he would work to rebuild my trust. The therapist acknowledged his progress but emphasized that actions would speak louder than words. Meanwhile, I updated Reddit with the new developments. Commenters were stunned by the extent of Linda's manipulation but also praised Adam for finally taking a stand. Still, many urged caution, saying that deep-seated enmeshment like this wouldn't be resolved overnight. For now, I'm still staying at my friend's house, trying to decide if Adam's newfound awareness is enough to salvage our marriage. He's continued therapy on his own and cut off financial support to Linda, but the damage she's done, and the trust that's been broken, will take time to repair. Update 5. After weeks of soul-searching and conversations with friends and my therapist, I made the decision to end my marriage. It wasn't easy, but I realized that staying with Adam meant constantly battling Linda for control of my life. I couldn't keep living like that. I met with a lawyer, explained everything, and officially filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Breaking the news to Adam was as painful as I'd expected. I invited him to meet me at a cafe, choosing a public place to avoid any dramatic outbursts. When I told him, he looked crushed. He pleaded for another chance, promising that he'd keep going to therapy and that things would be different this time. I reminded him that I'd heard those promises before, and that while I believed he wanted to change, I needed to prioritize my own well-being. He eventually nodded, defeated, and agreed to respect my decision. With the help of friends and family, I found a small apartment not too far from my work. Moving out felt bittersweet, leaving behind the life I'd tried so hard to build with Adam, but also stepping into a space that was entirely my own. My friends were incredible during the move, bringing wine, snacks, and words of encouragement. One of them even brought a framed quote that said, "The best way to predict your future is to create it." It now sits on my new bookshelf as a reminder of this new chapter. Linda's reaction, unsurprisingly, was gleeful. She told anyone who would listen that I'd abandoned Adam because I couldn't handle a real family and even encouraged him to find someone who appreciates him. But the cracks in her facade were starting to show. Extended family members who had once supported her were now avoiding her. Olivia told me that Linda's lies and manipulations had alienated most of the family. Even her closest friends were starting to distance themselves after hearing about the drama she'd caused. Meanwhile, Adam was struggling. Without me to lean on, he began to see Linda's behavior for what it was. She continued to call him constantly, making demands and guilt-tripping him whenever he tried to set boundaries. He stayed in therapy, determined to untangle himself from her control, but it wasn't easy for him. A few weeks after I moved out, he sent me a long email apologizing for everything. He admitted that he'd failed me as a partner and that his inability to stand up to Linda had destroyed our marriage. He thanked me for helping him see the truth, even though it was too late for us. Despite his apology, I chose to go no contact with both Adam and Linda. I knew that any attempt to remain in touch would only pull me back into the toxicity I was trying to escape. I blocked their numbers and focused on rebuilding my life. The next few months were a whirlwind. I threw myself into my career, started going to the gym regularly, and even picked up a new hobby, painting. It was something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. I joined a local art class and found it incredibly therapeutic. My teacher joked that my favorite subject seemed to be freedom, given how many open landscapes and unrestrained brushstrokes I painted. Friends and family continued to rally around me, checking in often and inviting me out to events. For the first time in years, I felt truly supported and free. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next crisis or passive-aggressive comment. I could just be me. Months later, Adam reached out again, this time with a heartfelt letter. He apologized once more, acknowledging that I'd made the right decision to leave. He admitted that he was still struggling to set boundaries with Linda but was making progress. He ended the letter by saying he wished me nothing but happiness and hoped that one day I could forgive him. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I knew there was nothing left to say. Forgiveness is a process, and while I don't hold any hatred toward Adam, I know that I need to keep moving forward without looking back. As for Linda, I heard through the grapevine that she tried to reconnect with Adam after he started pulling away. She ramped up her guilt tripping, using everything from family emergencies to fake illnesses to keep him close. But Adam, to his credit, began setting firm boundaries. He stopped taking her calls late at night and refused to give her money. The last I heard, she was living a much quieter life, with fewer people willing to tolerate her antics. I shared my journey on Reddit one last time, detailing everything from the divorce to my new life. The response was overwhelming. People cheered me on, shared their own stories, and reminded me that I wasn't alone. One comment in particular stuck with me. Walking away isn't failure, it's choosing yourself. And that's always a win. Now, as I sit in my little apartment, surrounded by the life I'm building for myself, I feel a sense of peace I haven't felt in years. Leaving Adam and Linda wasn't easy, but it was the best decision I've ever made. I've learned that boundaries aren't just about protecting yourself from others, they're about making space for the life you deserve.